The following program may contain language of an adult nature. Listener discretion is advised.
Views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff or management of alltalkradio.net.
We are anonymous. And if you don't know, you better ask somebody. My boy Maxwell Silverhammer and my bottom bitch jerk man will set you straight with some good old true shit and none of the shit that irks me. Hey Maxie baby, I still got them videos. You fill my cereal pot perfectly. Bitch.
Ah, yes! Finally kicked those fuckers off the air.
It's about goddamn time. I got sick of those fucks.
Yeah, that G.J. Jerkman and Maxwell Silverhammer with all their goddamn anti-corporate talk.
Just be happy. We're gonna go celebrate right now. I think we should go do some golf and butt fuck one another.
Oh, that's the greatest. I'm ready. Hold on. Go get in the car here.
Get the hell in the other side. Another side. There you go.
There we go. This is a great day.
I'm gonna start it up now. You ready?
These bastards.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Bora Bora, here we go.
It's the Stim Radio Show.
Maxwell Silverhammer, G.J. Jerkman, Cruise Control, and G Motor. Do you smell fire? I think somebody lit a cigarette. Nope, it's the hottest radio show on the internet. So keep it locked here from 7 to 9 for the Stim Radio family ahead of their time. And now it's lesson 1, man, this is lesson 2. No format because they keep it fresh and new. And this is what I call HQ. A win for you, a musical genius, man. They can't paint it like a face is. But if the content is making you sick, take some Dayquil. And if you think that the jocks sound quirky, allow me to introduce you to the shit that irks me.
All right, you sons of fucking bitches. Welcome to the shit that fucking irks me. God damn, I'm blasting out of this thing. I'm going to just turn my thing down a little bit because I was coming out loud. Anyway, I am Maxwell Silverhammer. This is the shit that irks me. Welcome on the Skype. We have Stephen Tonti. What's happening, man?
Not too much. How are you?
Good, good. So, Stephen, you have ADHD. You were diagnosed as a kid, right?
Yes, sir.
So, tell us. I like the story you tell of how you were diagnosed. Tell that story, man. It's pretty cool.
Okay, so I actually have made an alteration to that story. I wasn't actually diagnosed that way. It was actually a screening, which is what you technically call that when a teacher or a professor, someone who's not professionally trained to diagnose, it's called a screening. They may have all the tools and tricks to figure out if you have ADHD, but they can't make an official diagnosis. But yeah, no, I love this story. My family and I had just moved from Madisonville, Louisiana to Dallas, Texas, and I was looking for a new academic home, so I applied to a myriad of schools, and in one particular interview, this particular teacher received a message ahead of time from my first grade teacher back in Louisiana to keep an eye out to screen me for any signs and symptoms of ADHD, and just when she got to the point of asking me those questions, I slammed out of the chair onto the floor, abruptly halting the interview. And what had happened was, in her office there was a massive window, as the story goes, and through the window were a ton of kids my age playing with a giant inflatable soccer ball. And I, like any boy that age, or girl, was obsessed with not only playing, but also soccer and sports and being outside.
Right.
And the idea of being out there with all those kids was way more appetizing than inside probably a frigid, cold, small office being interviewed by a second-grade teacher. So yeah, I fell out of the chair because I wanted to be outside, and that was just one error in a series of errors during that whole interview process, which deemed me not worthy for that particular lower school. I was rejected from that school.
Wow. So it's just kind of funny though that here it was, you were proving the point. It wasn't like they had to do a lot of hard work to really, grill you to see whether or not you did or did not have ADHD. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I don't think I made it past question 1.
Well, here's the thing, man. Over the years doing the show, my stance on ADHD has always been, oh, it's bullshit. You know, it's not real. As a matter of fact, I used to make the joke that, yeah, the kid doesn't have ADHD, they have ADHP, another dumb, hopeless parent. And, you know, I always said it was just, you know, a lack of discipline and, you know, the parents aren't involved enough and the teachers aren't involved enough and they're letting the kid run wild. Then all of a sudden, you know, they want him to sit still for something and he can't, and they can't figure out why. But, you know, man, I got to say, listening to your video for the first time a couple weeks ago was the first time that I really kind of sat and took a look at it and went, holy shit, for once I'm wrong. You know what I'm saying?
No, hey, I know the feeling. I'm wrong all the time, and I said in a recent version of an updated version of the talk, I don't claim to be an expert, and of the hundreds of people who have reached out to me after seeing the talk, the first thing I send them, sort of like, I hate the reference, but sort of like reading the Miranda rights, the first thing I say is, I'm not an expert, seek psychiatric help, here are the websites, here are the magazines, here are the studies to go check out, the real doctors. However, I do have a unique lived-in experience, and I can say for a fact that my brain works differently than my roommates, my friends, when I was in college, my peers, some of my family members. And then the fun part is you start to recognize those family members you probably got it from. And it is congenital and it is hereditary. So, yeah, I know. I used to hear the naysayers, especially in high school. I remember being in an English class, and a particular friend of mine who was infamous for acting dumb around all the boys, but when she was in class, she was a teacher's pet and brilliant. And so we didn't know why she was flip-flopping all the time. During SAT season, was angry that a fellow student of ours had gotten extended time somewhat unfairly, let's say.
Oh.
He may have cheated or faked his way to that extended time, and she said, you know, ADHD is bullshit. And I turned and confronted her even then, saying, hey, you don't get it. It's different. You know, I'm not celebrating. I'm not, you know, throwing confetti and using ADHD as an excuse every day to get me out of shit. It's something that I'm dealing with every day, and I choose to embrace it and be positive and excited about it, and having people like you behind my back saying, it's bullshit, you know, it's just, you know, really overactive kids is crushing the vibe, man. Especially when I'm trying to
I'll tell you the big problem, though, man, is the overdiagnosis, I think. You know, a lot of kids, wouldn't you admit that not all these kids that are being diagnosed with ADHD, or now the big one is autism, you know, that they all happen to have this? You think it's just an overdiagnosis, maybe?
So the issue is complex, and it's varied. It's not just one problem. I wish I could respond and say, yeah, Maxwell, it's just we're overdiagnosing kids, period. But it's actually way more complex and messed up than that. It's not only... I do think that there is absolutely a push for medicate it and forget it, especially in Western culture. We're looking for quick fixes most of the time. It's much harder to fund after-school exercise programs than it is for pharmaceutical to raise billions and billions of dollars in investments in medication,
right.
Which we will buy because it is pitched and advertised as an easy and quick solution. Having said that, there is a significant rise in correct and absolutely valid diagnoses of ADHD, autism, bipolar disorder, and more interesting than the diagnoses themselves is actually a new cross-diagnoses. There are a series of studies that started kind of in 2011, 2012 to pick up speed, and they've been showing significant results in misdiagnoses in ADHD and autism combined. A few studies in California and a couple studies in Oregon showed that a significant percentage of children diagnosed with ADHD also exhibited behavioral traits of autism. There was a study in pediatrics that found that 18% of children with ADHD also showed signs of autism. And in 2013, the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. There are 5 editions.
I was going to say, I think there's a 5th now, isn't there?
Yes, yeah. So the 5th one came out in 2013 and was massively updated, particularly with ADHD. And before 2013, in 4 separate editions of the DSM, they said that you could not have ADHD and autism together. Not possible. Well, in 2013, they completely reversed that. It is now, according to the American Psychiatric Association, absolutely possible to have both. And what we're finding is that a lot of these mental disorders are related. They're cousins of each other, if you will. It's not, this kid's got ADHD, this kid's got autism, this kid's got bipolar disorder, and et cetera, et cetera. It's way less black and white than that. It's more gray. And one study showed in 2012 that 50% of adults between the ages of 19 and 27 diagnosed with ADHD showed significant signs of either bipolar disorder or autism. So it's starting to look like it's more of a family of cognitive diversity, of attention difference, if you will, as opposed to like peers.
It'd be kind of nice though if they could just kind of slap them all into one, I guess. I think the big problem is you're seeing parents that think, oh, the more diagnoses and disabilities that I can have, my kid can have, the more money they're going to get, the more privileges they're going to get, things like that. And I've actually seen that where, you talk to a kid and they'll say, I got this, and give you the whole laundry list of things. And you're going, my God, there's no way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I've also seen the opposite, though, unfortunately. I have a really good friend who lives in Chicago, unnamed here. He's my age, went to school for acting and for critical writing, etc. Did not come from a wealthy background at all. A parent of multiple marriages and divorces, multiple kids, definitely a blue-collar family. And his problem is that he was diagnosed with ADHD, and there is no money. There is no help. He's actually in and out of homelessness because of his condition and the struggle that he's going through. And I've heard many, many stories like that. It's okay. My neuropsych evaluation, which I just got reevaluated in Memphis, Tennessee this year, actually last year in October, that psych evaluation cost $2,000.
Wow.
That $2,000 psych evaluation was not covered by my insurance because it was considered, I forget the terminology, but basically it wasn't a necessity, if you will. To get the evaluation, it wasn't a medical need, right?
Right.
So because of that, that was $2,000 out of pocket. Now, I don't need to spend too much time explaining that a lot of people don't have anywhere near that kind of money to drop on a 7-hour test one day.
Mm-hmm.
So on the other side of the table, yes, I'm sure there are plenty of, like my peer in high school, who I know, and again, will not name, but he absolutely took advantage of the system and got extended time on his PSATs and his SATs. Having said that, there is a whole nother realm of inability to cover the cost of these disorders, and in some cases they're extremely severe and make social interaction very tough for these children and young adults, and the parents can't pay for it. They can't pay for the medication.
Right.
And on top of that, yes, a horrid education system in the U.S. Don't need to mention the statistics. We're not ranked very high in the world, particularly in public schools. And when you compound the issue that there are families who just can't pay for that kind of neuropsych evaluation. I mean, imagine the family who looks at their kid and the kid is saying, Mom, Dad, something's wrong with me, and they can't get proper testing or proper diagnoses. And let's say for a second that kid legitimately has autism or ADHD, and their parents are looking at them like, suck it up, deal with it. And now that kid's on a journey for the next 18 years of his or her life, dealing with something that a larger percentage of their friends will not deal with. And they're going to have to struggle on that bus alone. And I've heard those stories as well, and those are heartbreaking. So it is hard to balance those who are manipulating the system and those who are suffering through another manipulated system. I mean, to be entirely frank, I'm not a huge fan of Pfizer. So pharmaceutical corporations bother many people, myself included, and. So it's not just the parents looking for an extra incentive, finding an extra incentive and looking for that extra cost cut. It's also pharmaceutical companies pushing pills.
Well, and that's it. That's like the overdiagnoses. And then the parents sort of bite into this and go, "Well, this is great. We can use this as a meal ticket." I'll share a little something with you. I don't know if you know, and maybe I didn't tell you. I'm totally blind since birth. So I'm disabled myself. And
I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't say anything to you, so I guess it would never have come up. But, I guess when I see people, milking things to their best advantage, that's when I get pissed off, because I'm like, wow, I'm trying so hard, so I don't make a spectacle of myself. And here are these people, the first thing out of their mouth. Matter of fact, we went and did karaoke about a year ago, and there was this girl who had Asperger's syndrome. We asked her to go with us, and there were some people there she didn't know. The first thing she did was get up, introduce herself, and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I have Asperger's." To these new people, So this was like taught to her as, hey, wear this as a badge of honor. This is going to be your ticket in life. You know what I'm saying?
Did she act as though it was something that made her special or unique in a way that was trying to take advantages of the strangers?
No question. I mean, she used it to her advantage in every way. As far as, to me, she asked me some pretty, and I don't care, I'm a guy, but she asked me some pretty personal sexual questions. And, it was kind of, if somebody were to if I were to say, hey, that's not appropriate, you don't say that. Well, in her mind, it was, well, I got Asperger's, so fuck it, I can say what I want. They're not going to question me. So, I've seen people do this where they've used, their disability to their best advantage, or the parents teach them to do that, or the doctors teach them to do that. And that's my problem, man. That's kind of been my issue with this whole ADHD, bipolar, autism thing the whole time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand. Everyone has their own cross to bear, and taking advantage of the spike in diagnoses and saying, "Oh, I've got it too, me," is unfair. And I can't recommend that adults like your friend that you brought to karaoke use, whether or not her disorder was valid or not. I won't claim to know that, but if it was, using it as a tool to manipulate people, to open up more or feel more comfortable. I mean, that's just manipulation, whatever label she puts on it, saying, I have Asperger's, therefore I'm allowed to do this. Yeah. Now, having said that, I am a huge supporter of those who choose to celebrate their cognitive diversity. So I'm not going to say that someone who introduced themselves, "Hi, I'm Amy and I have Asperger's," just so you're aware, that, at that point, it could go either way. Now, in the situation of karaoke night, she decided to use that as a manipulative tool to toy with people. That's uncool.
Right,
but
we'll see.
Yeah,
and that's what they're taught, man. I've seen people actually, even other blind kids. I used to work as a camp counselor, and they would just act out, and their mindset was, well, you're not going to tell me no, I'm blind. And I'm thinking, well, bullshit, I'm blind too, and, I was told no plenty of times, So it's that whole thing, and I guess that's where I come at it from my perspective is, I see people, that are taught this is how you manipulate the system. I remember a little girl that she was, 5 or 6 at the time, and her excuse to drink soda late at night was, well, I have ADD, it calms me down. And I'm going, who the fuck is telling you this shit? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So that's where I'm coming from with this, and that's kind of why I've taken the stance I've taken for years with that, Yeah,
it's interesting. It's not something that I've dealt with. It's not something that I've dealt with as often, and maybe it's a factor of my age, because having been a recent college grad, I'm mostly dealing with students, and the toughest and most frustrating system or social system that I came into contact with, obviously, was students selling Adderall and Ritalin to each other to finish tests and essays and studies on time, right? So my bigger frustration was when peers of mine, I won't say friends of mine, would say, "Hey, Stephen, I heard you take Ritalin. Are you willing to sell?" And my position since high school was absolutely not. So I have been asked many times and said, "Oh, absolutely not. I do not do that or condone that." That was my biggest frustration in the last 5 to 10 years, was dealing with the abuse of medication, therefore delegitimizing the diagnosis in its entirety.
Oh, absolutely.
Coming into contact with people who were taught to take advantage of their
disabilities.
Disabilities, mental advantages, skills, etc. That's it's a thin line, and it's an interesting gray area that, to be entirely frank, I haven't explored, either personally or outside of myself or philosophically. And if I came into contact with somebody who was an acquaintance or a peer, and that was the case, I'm a journalist myself. The first questions out of my mouth would be, hey, why do you ask those questions? Why do you talk like that? Who taught you to do that, and where were you diagnosed, and what was your struggle like? Just like anybody, any community. It's funny you bring up, not funny, but the fact that you bring up being blind. I was just talking to some friends about the deaf community and comparing the deaf community with the ADHD and bipolar and autistic community, and sort of comparing and contrasting this sense of pride. It wasn't until very recently that the deaf community was arguably allowed to enjoy and celebrate their uniqueness, their deafness, if you will. And with that is going to come challenged people who choose to use those physical anatomical differences to their advantage in a negative way. And I think that's what's happening with ADHD and bipolar and autism in your experience. We're coming to our celebration of cognitive diversity. It's happening right now, and with that inevitably is going to come people who use it to abuse the system, and that sucks, because at the end of the day, I'm right there with you. It's frustrating because it delegitimizes the diagnosis from the outset, and it makes us look bad. Right. Which is not good. And like I said, I repeat, if I was in the presence of someone treating their special, unique self or thrusting their special, unique self unfairly on other people, I'm the first one to speak up and say, hey, cut that out. That's unfair.
Well, I like your stance on it anyway. I don't even want to keep calling it a disability, I guess, because like you said, it's not a disability. It's just a different, what did you put it? A different cognitive...
I call it attention different, not deficit, and or the other forms of that are aneurotypical, cognitively diverse. I use cognitive diversity. Others have used different catchphrases, if you will, or different categorizations of it. But it's basically neurodiversity, right? So okay. It's instead of treating it. When I get my diagnosis, this is something I'm riffing on right now, so here's like a special preview of what's coming in the new talk. Okay. But something I've been working with is the fact that ADHD is a negative diagnosis from the outset, just in the title.
Sure.
So ADHD is attention deficit hyperactive disorder. That's 3 out of 4 words that are negative and 1 neutral word, right? Mm-hmm. So when I say attention different, not deficit, I'm just trying to rebalance the diagnosis, because if I'm a parent hearing this heavily weighted negative title, I'm going to feel better, much better, and call me silly or naive, but psychology has a lot to do with how we treat a tough situation, right? If I hear that my child is attention different, not attention deficit, not mental disorder, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, yes, it's all necessary to put on the table, but if it's approached as a difference in cognition, if it's a neurodiversity, not a all-in-all detriment, a net negative, then I, the parent or the teacher, am going to put more effort into it. I'm not going to feel as defeated. I'm not going to feel as like, oh, shit, here we go. What doctor am I going to next? What medicine do I have to use? What various medicines are there? Oh, my gosh, this avalanche of information. So, yeah, I choose to call it attention different, not deficit, because unique to me, my experience was altogether positive. And I took a look at myself at 21, 22 years old at Carnegie, and I thought, hey, something went right. My parents did well. My teachers did well. I'm standing at this, yes, there were luck of the draws that I had at birth. But, right. Barring all that, here's this disorder that I've got. Here's this difference in cognition that I've got, and yet 21, 22, here I am feeling happy, confident. I love myself in a healthy way.
Well, and why shouldn't you? You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah. I mean, like it's one of those things. Another story that I love to tell because it's precious in its own way. Right. The reason why I ended up auditioning for this speech was because I was dating a classmate at the time whom I love to death to this day, and she had ADHD. She has ADHD. Now, I was born and raised in the South, Louisiana and Texas. For whatever reasons, I won't get into it, but you had your teachers and your preachers, right? There was no going to a psychiatrist or a therapist was more of a negative stigma than it is on the coasts, right?
Gotcha.
In New York or in California, it just didn't happen as much. It doesn't say it didn't happen at all, but it was less so. My girlfriend, meanwhile, was born and raised in the Upper West Side, Manhattan, and for her, being ADHD, it's funny how you say that you have your friend who says I'm Asperger's and celebrates that. For her. And for friends like her, being ADHD never came up. You don't say it. You know it, but you don't say it.
Yes, exactly.
But so the way it materialized, the way that it was treated with that philosophy, she would get very uncomfortable when I celebrated being ADHD. And to her credit, she would call me out when I used it as an excuse. And just like your Asperger's friend, that's wrong to use a get out of jail free card. However, we differed all 4 years of college until the very end, actually, until this TED Talk, on this notion of I am ADHD versus I have it and I don't talk about it.
Sure.
And in the new version of my talk, I've added this whole section about what is the difference, this small change in word, am versus have. And when you have the flu, you have the flu. When you have a cold, you have a cold. When you are ADHD, you are ADHD. You are autistic. You are Asperger's. It's my brain. It is me. I had a hard time understanding someone, my girlfriend at the time, arguing with me that my ADHD didn't define me when it is my brain. That's it, man. That's your computer. If your computer's got that in it, then that's how it operates.
Sure.
So for me, it was no question. I am ADHD, and I'm either going to run away from it and medicate it, or some combination of the both, or I'm going to celebrate it and work with it and enjoy living with it. And the reason I even auditioned for that talk was because I had just finished one of those massive fights with this ex of mine where I said, I am this, it defines me, I like it. And she said, you can't let it define you, you'll never get a job, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, I tend to agree a little bit, but at the same time, I like the fact you embrace it. It's good. But you're right. It doesn't define you. You are not, you're not Stephen Tonti, the guy with ADHD. Stephen Tonti just happens to have ADHD. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Navigating that path is tough. And at the time at college, it was easier for me to say, it was easier for me to even obnoxiously positively say, I am this is me, and love it and hug it and squeeze it. As I've gotten, and that helped lead to the TED Talk. I, having graduated and lived out in New York for 2.5 years now, and worked in various positions at various jobs, you temper that passion and you add a drop of reality to the situation. And now I understand. It's sort of like, hashtag real talk, real life, right? The real life situation is there are situations in which I struggle because I have this. And then there are situations in which having this is a great benefit. And now I don't walk into the room and go, hi, I'm Stephen Tonti and I'm ADHD. However, if someone asks, if someone points it out, of course I'm going to say, yeah, I happen to be attention different and I love it.
Right.
It is tough. It's tough. It's tough walking that path because at the time at university, it was psychologically beneficial for me to claim it really passionately. And now that I've graduated, and to be honest, now that I'm in the real world and there's all kinds of people, and I'm in New York, man, there's all kinds of people with all kinds of fucked up.
I can imagine.
I mean, you're in Vegas, so like I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah, we got plenty of fucked up people here. Trust me.
Yeah. So like once the pond turns from a pond into an ocean of people with all kinds of personality quirks, we'll call them. It's actually a lot harder. It doesn't hold as much social currency when I'm in New York, especially working in the entertainment industry, to say, I'm ADHD, and everyone turns and goes, yeah, we all are. Calm down, bud. So
it's not that unique anymore, is it?
No, exactly. And when you enter, when you enter the entertainment industry and you walk around with a badge saying, hi, I'm Stephen, I'm ADHD, everyone's wearing that same badge, give or take. So,
right.
We're all eccentric, eclectic people, so it's lost some of that, it's lost some of that social currency that it might have had in college or especially in high school in Dallas, Texas. And that's been a real life lesson for me. I've learned to curb that perhaps at times obnoxious passion of like, I am this thing and it's so great and I'm a superhero. It's like, no, you are different, and it is great and a good thing to celebrate being different.
Sure.
And keep doing that, but don't abuse it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, and we all find, kind of like you said, you found the perfect field for you, entertainment, where you kind of have to have ADHD to be a part of that, field. And
I mean, it helps. It's not a necessity, but it definitely helps when it helps.
Right. Well, and it's just a question of finding, for instance, me being blind, I tended to gravitate towards radio, as opposed to, I don't know, drawing or accounting or something that, just wouldn't interest me because it's not part of my world,
Yes, we human beings are fascinating for many reasons, and one of them is their ability to adapt. And to adapt really quickly in the grand scheme of time. I mean, if you look at a lifetime and it's 76, 78 odd years, you're able to, born blind and born ADHD, it only took me, the full 18 years of lower school, middle school, and high school to realize, hey, there's this theater thing over there, and they seem to like that I project and speak really loudly and frequently and a lot and love acting and performing. I'm gonna go hang out with those guys. And that happened in the grand scheme of life very quickly. But it's because I was supported and allowed to do that. I can't speak enough to the teachers that I had at that school, that very weird libertarian, moderate, liberal, like weird, brand new.
You mean think for yourself kind of school,
Well, it was just that it was Dallas, Texas, and all the other private high schools. I was lucky enough to go to a private high school, and the other schools were like hundreds of years old. Like Ursuline and Hockaday and St. Mark's and Jesuit. These are these old religiously based usually schools that have this sort of by rote mentality and are more conservative, more strict in general. It's a generalization. My school was only 34 years old, and because of that, there was a lot of new blood, and the teachers were this interesting blend of either liberal or libertarian and just like very outspoken and passionate and into. My school was special in that every single teacher I had, for the most part, was dedicated to students teaching themselves how to learn, like the students learning to research what they like, to discover that. And we had projects that I just didn't hear about in other schools, where we were in charge of our own projects. It was sophomore, junior year, teachers saying like, hey, listen, for this entire semester, it's on you, man. Like, go out there, figure out what you want the project to be about, do all the research. We're going to grade you every step of the way, but it's, figure out what you're interested in and then prove it to us. And that philosophy was pervasive at my school, so I can't commend it enough for being so free. I mean, like, my senior year, I had already been accepted into a conservatory drama program, and there was no need for calculus. I was done. I didn't need any more calculus. I had a C plus. If I'm being generous, it was probably a C minus if I'm being honest. And the professor was this awesome, wonderful teacher. Our nickname for him was White Tiger. He's the oldest professor at that school, and I dropped out. And he was heartbroken, but he had a private meeting with me after class. And I said, Mr. Whitlock, I got to be honest. I just don't, I'm into a drama conservatory. I'll be blunt with you. Math classes aren't in the curriculum for me for the next 4 years. And I don't need this credit. And he put his hand on my shoulder and he was like, I understand. I'll see you at Shakespeare this Friday. And he got, they without being sort of a hippy-dippy liberal school, the teachers were really comfortable with having adult conversations with the student, which was impressive.
Well, see, and that's the problem with a lot of the curriculum. They have a set curriculum, a set plan they have to follow, and it doesn't allow for any differences at all. And if you can't follow it, you're going to be asked out. Pretty much, and that's what's cool about these schools you're talking about now.
Yeah, I know. I believe you me. If I could hope for a massive shift in education to happen in the next 5 years, I mean, if I could somehow raise enough money to make that happen, in a decade, I would spearhead that movement right now, and maybe call me defeatist for not trying it right now. But it's happening slowly, it's happening steadily, and it's exciting. This new wave of
progressive teaching, maybe. Progressive
teaching, yeah, that's a good way to put it. Progressive teaching. Progressive learning. I mean, I say in my speech, learning differently requires teaching differently, and we're starting to get. We've understood that in pockets across the country and across the globe for a while, but it's becoming the norm slowly but steadily.
Right.
And if that keeps going that way, then we're all going to be much happier. I mean, I was actually reading a series of articles and columns written in the late 1800s by Dolmere, who talks about the ridiculousness of trying to. He was supporting the conservatory programming,
right?
And he was arguing, a whole myriad of conservative, more traditional professors and deans saying it's ridiculous and absurd to think that you can teach every child on the planet the same thing,
and in the same way.
In like the same thing in the same way, and that they will absorb it the same, and that they will regurgitate it the same way. It is an absurd notion. And here we are in kindergarten teaching kids we're all snowflakes and you're all special and you're all different. How contradictory is it that a teacher looks at a classroom full of kindergarten students and says you are all special and unique and different, and then goes back to teaching them all the exact same thing the exact same way for the next 18 years of their life.
Right.
And it's like you don't realize how hypocritical you are, ma'am, sir. Like,
yeah.
We're all snowflakes. We're all individuals. We are all special and unique and different. And somehow you think it's going to work to teach all 27 or 50 or 100 of us the exact same thing the exact same way.
And when you won't fall in line, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to get labeled. You're going to get all kinds of shit.
Yeah, I mean, the character Adam, my very, very good friend and actor Adam, who's in the speech, he is an example of a student who went to one of those hardline conservative, Trinity Christian Academy. Yes, I'm outing them because I don't care, and the way they treated that kid was abhorrent. And I'm sure there's great people there, but that story gives me the shivers. Yeah, TCA, the Academy, and they had more by rote methodology for education. And when you messed up, if you were Adam, there was a ruler on the wrist, man, literally, ruler slapped you on the wrist and sit down, shut up. And because of that, Adam was permanently affected in a negative way when it comes to ADHD, and he never got the treatment he deserved, and it was a total shit show, according to him. It was all kinds of medications, and they didn't track it well enough. I mean, studies just came out recently that you have to track medicating kids every 3 months, and that's pushing it.
Oh, we'll get into the medication in a second, man, because that's a whole nother thing. But I just wanted to, real quick, when we were talking about schools, you did mention a school called Eagle Hill, and actually a friend of mine who has a learning disability went there, years ago.
Cool.
So, they were the one in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah, so actually I added another school to the TED Talk 2.0, if you will, and it's a school that my younger sister went to. I now mention the Eagle Hill School in Massachusetts and Shelton Academy in, I don't think it's technically Dallas, it's probably Plano or Richardson. It's Richardson. And they're very similar. They're schools for kids with learning disabilities, and you know what the difference is, man? Educated teachers, better educated teachers with learning disabilities, and teachers who listen.
Yeah.
They just listen. When a kid says, "I feel this way," the teacher says, "Okay, reality or perception is in the eyes of the perceiver, right? Your reality is your reality. You feel this way. I'm not going to argue with you factually based or objectively because you feel this way. Let's talk about it. Let's explore it. Let's see if it's a significant problem. Let's see if it's really A or if it's really B."
Right, to give you the benefit of the doubt, instead of just forcing.
Exactly. Nope. There you go. Taking the verbose attention different kid and making it concise. You're doing your job well. Yes. Leveling with the kids.
Right.
Leveling with the kids. Giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Now, are they still an all-boys school? Do you know?
Eagle Hill, I'm actually not sure. I believe they're mixed. No, I think it's male and female.
Okay, because when he was there...
Actually, Yeah, it was all male.
Well, keep in mind this was 30-some years ago, man. So
No, I'm fairly certain. I'm fairly positive it's male and female.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they've changed it up then since he was there. But yeah, you're right. You do need specialized teachers that think a little bit differently than the textbook teacher, that's fresh out of college, and some of them get really thrown on their ass, man. They go into a classroom with kids that got, certain disabilities, and they don't know how to react. They're not taught.
Oh, I had a friend of mine at Carnegie who was a grad student. He was a grad writer. And I won't say, let's not say friend, let's just say peer, because I didn't know him super, super well, but I knew him well enough. It was a small school. And he had a blog. And his blog was about, after he graduated, he was a teacher at a public school in a poor neighborhood in Chicago. And the blog was great, because this grad student is whiter than white. I mean, blonde, like bleach white hair, blue eyes, very clean cut. That sort of teacher who takes enjoyment in correcting your grammar, but very funny and very quick, right?
Kind of like what was David Spade in High School High, right?
I don't know. I haven't actually seen High School High.
Oh, yeah, I think you should, man.
I will definitely look it up. Actually, I was thinking, I think Ed Norton, even less over the top, but like Matthew Perry recently did, the whole like I'm a teacher at a tough school bit. It was very I'm a teacher at a tough school, and his blog was, aside from just being so funny, it was an insight into the reality of the school system in this country, of the bulk of school systems, predominantly public school systems, in which you don't have time. You don't have time. This guy graduated grad school at Carnegie as a writer, and he was teaching English. And you think this guy has? I mean, I read the conversations that he had with some of these students, and when you're only teaching kids for 30 minutes to an hour, and some of these conversations back and forth, though funny on the page on this blog, last 15 to 20 minutes. The guy didn't have time to teach the material because kids are parented differently. It's just the reality of the situation that he was spending more time fielding wild and varied personalities.
Yeah.
That how is that guy who's maybe 27, 28 going to have the know-how or the ability to spot cognitive diversity in real time, and B, know how to treat it appropriately. So it's just we actually do have a crisis of teachers, and not even dealing with ADHD, autism, and bipolar, and anything in the DSM. We have a crisis in shortage of well-educated teachers. Period. Right. So So it's even hard for me to be waving this neurodiversity, cognitive diversity flag when there's a serious money problem in public schools, and teachers, talk about staffing schools, period, let alone with people who know how to spot these problems and deal with them appropriately. So schools like Eagle Hill and Shelton are a miracle, truthfully, that they exist. And it's signs of progression. We are moving forward with schools like that.
Right.
I mean, shit, if the Blue Man Group can have a school of their own, then
Yeah, that's true. But no, you're right. It's the mindset, I think, of a lot of these higher ups, and they don't want to believe this stuff exists. The kids just don't want to listen. They just don't want to, let some social worker diagnose the kid. That kind of thing.
Exactly. And those, God, I listen to enough radio shows and podcasts about social workers and some of these public schools and what they're dealing with when they're dealing with kids in the tens of thousands. Like, we're talking about a team of 5 social workers who manage the entirety of Ferguson, Missouri's public school district.
Oh, God.
It's like, I will admit is a made up number, but it is low.
Yeah, something low and ridiculous like that then.
It's something ridiculously low and absurd, and we expect that those, 5, 10, 15, 20 people to manage, 50,000 kids. It's insane. So yeah, I mean, it's when I listen to those radio shows, those are sort of my drink a glass of scotch and put my forehead to my hand, and just what am I doing? It's such a bigger problem. It's like such a bigger problem. It's yeah.
You definitely got a lot of work to do, man, as far as educating the public. And, I know that. I run into people all the time. I get an ignorant statement probably every day. I have a segment on the show where I just ranting about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
There's a lot of work we got to do, man, and it may not be done in our lifetime,
Right, but one of my favorite quotes is from a chef on a TV show I can't endorse enough, Chef's Table, and he said, he runs the Blue Hill restaurant in New York. He said, if you're trying to solve a problem that's solvable in your lifetime, it's not big enough.
Interesting. That's pretty profound.
Yeah, that's got to be one of my favorite. I've been championing, and my roommates and I have been championing that one for the last year.
Well, I want to talk about the medications too, because obviously they gave you all these crazy meds, growing up and whatnot. What I thought was interesting is that your glass of scotch right there.
No, that's a soda, and somewhere my girlfriend is screaming, "Put down the Coca-Cola." That's my. This is my anxiety drink. It's my if I'm nervous, which congratulations, I was before this.
We made you nervous, huh?
Yeah, a little bit nervous. So I poured a nice cold glass of Coca-Cola.
Oh, good.
This is that moment that if we had video, I'd be holding up the Coca-Cola and saying Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
What happened?
Unfortunately, we didn't have the video for the Skype tonight. It was kind of a long thing, but anyway. With the medications, what I thought was interesting is they'd put you on them during the school year, then take you off them for the summer.
Oh, yeah, totally.
How was that, man?
Well, okay, barring for a moment the hilarity that is a 10-year-old to 15-year-old taking a low dose of an amphetamine to like get their classwork done, and then when summer hits, everyone's like, "Oh, go be you! Oh, go have fun! Oh, it's summer! Go play! Go! That's what you're supposed to do!" And not finding some combination of those two things is something that I reflect on bitterly. To be honest,
right?
So yeah, I would take my parents did everything they absolutely could do, and they did a great job in terms of managing the medication I was taking and trying different medications and mixing it up and not just sticking to one. One of the bigger problems right now with medication in the U.S., also in the U.K., is, like I said, medicate it and forget it. So just medicating is not a solution. I mean, let alone using medication, only medication. But beyond that, a lot of kids are getting Ritalin or Adderall or Concerta or Vyvanse, and they're stopping on that, and they're sitting on that medication for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 4 years, and suddenly it stops working, or it works sometimes and it doesn't work others. And more studies are coming out in the last 5 years that show that it was something crazy, like 2/3 of, and I'll look up the study in a second for you, but 2/3 of students who were administered one type of medication for ADHD reacted differently or not at all to that same medication 12 months later. Wow. So 2/3 of kids in this study showed signs of having to switch medications or just change the dose. So not just switch entirely. Sometimes it was they needed more or they needed less, but they reacted entirely differently after 12 months. 1/3 of those kids stayed relatively the same. But you're talking, and it should make sense. It should make sense. Kids at that age are going through rapid hormonal development, and you are talking about, and I don't think it gets talked about enough, this bluntly, pumping a chemical that produces dopamine into a 10-year-old's brain, and expecting it to work the same way for the next 5 years is ludicrous. Or to expect it to not cause some harm. And see,
that's been my problem with this. You know what I'm saying? I mean, look, like you said, you saw The Medicated Child, you said, right?
Oh, say again?
The movie The Medicated Child, it was on Netflix. Oh, yes. So, I mean, yes. That's crazy. What's going on there. And these kids are having tics and strange reactions to this medicine. And, this isn't like, okay, well, you got a cough, take a little, Triaminic or something, and you'll be better. And that's how it works. Like you said, all the effects are different on every kid,
Yeah. Right. And one of the tougher things for me has been acknowledging that medication worked for me extremely well. There were significant and not to be denied downsides to taking Ritalin. I took methylphenidate Ritalin, and I was one of that that percentage of students that it worked and it consistently worked, and I just had to change the dose every once in a while. It had an immediate effect, and it had an immediate positive effect. I was lucky in that my teachers, my parents, my doctors, and my school nurse, were on me 24/7. I mean, I was taking it 3 times a day, so that made it easier. But they were asking me constantly, "Do you feel good today? Are you eating today? Do you have a headache?" etc. So they were wonderful about it. But that didn't negate the fact that every summer, between the ages of 10, 11, and 17, 15, 16, I had migraines for a week, sometimes 2 weeks, for the first week to 2 weeks outside of school, because I was taking 3 doses of 5 milligrams of methylphenidate, which is amphetamine, for 36 weeks straight.
Whoa.
And don't try and tell me that my body was not going through symptoms of withdrawal from a drug. I was 10. So like when I was 10, 11, and 12, yes, I have migraines and I'm shaking and I can't get out of bed for a week. That's because my body is going through withdrawal from a drug that I was taking 3 times a day, 5 days a week for 36 weeks straight, and then stopped cold turkey on a Monday because it was summer.
See, that's so. I mean, the thing is, that's where you can tell it's almost more of a pacifier, as opposed to something that's actually going to help you. If this really does help, in fact, wouldn't they keep you on that through the summer? Now you can't even enjoy your summer.
Well, so now, because the human body is a miracle, that's a miracle machine,
right.
It took a week or 2, and I was back to being me. What are the long-term effects from taking these medication that young? Got to be honest, based on the drug effectiveness, there was a study, but it received very little press, based on an Oregon State University. It was a 731-page report called the Drug Effectiveness Review Project, and it analyzed over 2,200 studies with all kinds of drugs regarding ADHD. It was just for ADHD. A lot of those studies were thrown out because they weren't good enough, they were critically poor, etc.
Right.
However, a significant amount, over 180 studies, demonstrated good controls and methods, and they concluded, again, very little press was given on this study, there was no evidence on long-term safety of drugs used to treat ADHD in young children, and the good quality evidence was lacking on the long-term effects of these drugs on kids, taken this early. So you're talking about a drug that does legitimately solve tough problems. So I'm not delegitimizing the medication working per se, but we don't know what it did. I joke in the new version of my talk that I am 5'7" and a half and proud. However, there are some studies that show that Ritalin, Adderall, Concerta stunt growth. Ooh. And I might be 5'9". So I wouldn't mind being 5'9". So there's the potential, the very real potential for significant changes in my physical and mental construction based on taking these medications early on. However, I have to also be a realist and a pragmatist and say that the same thing is true for giving kids coffee, caffeine, too much sugar, too much soda, etc. So it's tough. My stance. My parents know this. I've been public and open about this. I will, if my child has ADHD, I'm pretty certain I am not going to give drugs to that child until they are physically and mentally ready to take it, and that's going to be well into their teens.
Let me just cut you real short. We're coming up to the top of the hour, but I have a paratransit that's coming very early, about 8:30. So we're just going to roll straight through, no commercials or anything. We're just going to continue with this, if that's cool.
Great.
So,
oh, yeah.
So anyway, well, and now you bring up another issue though. If you say, "Oh, I'm going to wait till the kid's, a teenager and well able," which is what you should do, but then you're going to have some jerk off somewhere that's going to decide, well, that's actually abuse, that's neglect. We're going to Child Protective Services. There's that bullshit too.
unfortunately, I wish I had total control. I wish I was omnipresent, and I wish that my situation was the norm.
Mm-hmm.
However, I had a babysitter. A short anecdote. I had a babysitter back in the day. Her name was Melanie, and she babysat kids, but her main work was with autistic children.
Okay.
And I must have been 11 or 12, maybe 13, when Melanie was at the height of babysitting, myself and my siblings. And that was my first real exposure to autism, ASD.
Were there other kids that you were getting babysat with?
More that when she picked us up from school or she dropped us off, she might also be caretaking a boy or girl with autism.
Okay.
So Susie or Kyle or Sam or whoever would be in the car with us, and they had autism, or she would be helping us with her homework, and Susie, Sam, Kyle would come over and she would ask us. She was trained for this. She was very good with these kids.
Okay.
Do you guys mind if so and so comes over and does homework in another room? We were raised well, and we were like, sure, whatever. Who cares? There were some funny moments and some sticky moments between my siblings and some of the kids at some points. But the fact of the matter is, it was my first exposure to that kind of neurodiversity, and I remember a sliding scale of some of those kids. Some of those kids could make eye contact, could hug, could handshake, could talk, could hold a conversation, and some of those kids really, really, really couldn't.
Yeah.
And it broke my heart. And I was only, my 12, 13-year-old heart, but I got it. And I attribute that to being ADHD. I related. I understood that they were experiencing something different or other than their peers, and I empathized immediately. Mm-hmm. So I was never uncomfortable, whereas my siblings might have felt uncomfortable at times. I saw eye to eye immediately with these kids. And I will tell you that I, at a very early age, saw the worst of it, where it can, hitting, slapping, screaming, panic attacks, crying, scratching,
right.
real uncontrollable cognitive diversity. And in those cases, it's one of those extremely complicated situations. I am 24 years old. Shock. I do not have children. I am not married. I can't fathom the pressures of being a parent when your child is that autistic or ADHD or bipolar child in the backseat who's reacting in a way that you actually can't control. You have zero control over that situation. And in those cases, seeking professional psychiatric help, and if some medication helps, and you approach it appropriately, and you have the time and the luxury of doing so, then you should.
Right.
As far as answering the question of leaving your child unattended, or making the choice that I'm going to not medicate my child. Well, in my case, very clearly I'm going to be the educated parent who knows all of the other options that I have with my child. So if someone were to look at me and say, you're neglecting your child, I'd be like, well, go watch my TED Talk from 2013. Okay, I'm the wrong. You've got the wrong guy to yell at. I know what I'm doing here, and if I were caught in a situation where I had a child who had those challenges, I would do everything in my power, like my parents did and like the best parents out there do, to handle the situation and make our child's lives happy, positive, worth living, right? So if the situation was dire, that's kind of why I paused a little bit, and that's why I'm cautious when I say, I use words like I'm probably not going to medicate my child until they're in their teens, because I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what my child may or may not have, or may not be diagnosed with. But my stance right now, where I am, 2015, is that if my kid is mildly ADHD, I'm not giving that kid medication unless or until they absolutely need it, and I'm going to be a hawk on that child. I am going to be the best house dad, and I will make sure that child is happy and taken care of. However, if it's mild, if medication isn't necessary, I know all the other alternatives, and I'm going to try those first before I give my 10-year-old.
I mean, I dig what you're saying, dude. You're preaching to the choir. I'm I'm rolling with you right there. But my thing is, I mean, you probably heard the story about the blind parents that got the kid taken away because the nurse thought that, you know, how are these people going to take care of a kid? So the problem is you have busybody assholes that think they know better, and this is what you're going to run up against. That's what I'm afraid of for you, man, because, you know, you're right. You know, if anybody knows, you'd know best. But, you know, people don't, they're so clinical thinking. They're so on this, you know, this linear bunch of bullshit. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, well, listen, when that happens, I have a pamphlet of studies. I promise, pinky promise, between now and when I have a kid, I am going to have the most up-to-date research and studies that when those people come around, I say, you don't know what you're talking about. Here is the proof, whatever it is at that time, that says that I could be doing this, and this.
Right.
To make sure this kid is okay. And the reason why I am doing any of this shit, Maxwell, is because I want to be a voice. I have had people tell me to be quiet and to figure my shit out first, but you know what? No. I'm going to be shouting from the mountaintop. There are other ways to approach this cognitive diversity, this attention difference, and we should be exploring it openly and proudly and loudly right now, all the time.
Sure.
So like, I let me be the preacher. I'm going out there and saying, hey, all of you parents who are uneducated, which is not your fault all the time. You just don't know. Your doctors, you know, your doctors may know, your doctors may not know. Your teachers may know, your teachers may not know. So for all those people who don't have the full 360-degree view, the full spectrum, here it is. Here are the studies. Here are the websites. Go to these places. Subscribe to Attitude Magazine, ADDITUDE. Subscribe to CHAD, which is free. You know, children and adults with ADHD. These are the people who, you know, the deaf community, the blind community. Go seek those communities out and ask them the questions. Do I have to do this? Do I need medication? And get the conversation going. You're right. There are those people out there who are extremely clinical, and it's anti-human, and that's sad. There are people out there who seem to be anti-human, and lack empathy in a significant and sad way. And I've heard the stories. We could share stories for hours. I'm sure.
But they think they're being so human. They think they're so humanitarian, like they're saving, they're helping, you know, and they're full of shit. And that's why I'm saying, man, be prepared to fight, because there's probably going to be some asshole out there that will fight with you on some shit like that. You know, I am prepared to champion my unique lived-in experience. And right now that's not all I've got, but that's the most I've got, and I'm proud of it, and willing to throw that in their face and say, listen, there are alternatives. There is a happy way, there is a positive way, and it takes constant work. It is tiresome. It is sometimes exhausting. It is not easy, but what life is easy. You know, especially any decade, any time, what life is easy. So, I mean, the entire notion of medicate it and forget it is disconcerting, because it, in certain cases, falls under this belief system that life is easy, that there is an easy option. And no, there is not. Even if medication works, even if, as my parents say, which I believe them, Ritalin was a miracle drug for me. It happened instantaneously. I was focusing better. I was contributing, quote unquote, the right way. But a Ritalin worked for me, but it didn't stop there. It didn't stop with medication. My father sends me articles once a week nowadays about new studies regarding alternatives and where the research is going into ADHD and autism. They aren't just one page, are they? Because I know in your talk you said you'll read a 500-page novel, but you won't read a one-page article if you're not interested.
I will tell you that that same best friend that I actually updated my talk, like I've mentioned a few times, and in it now is this bit where my best friend, I'm married to the guy on Facebook from high school. I had a series of extremely good guy friends in high school, and he's one of them. He's probably one of the smartest people I know, and frustratingly so. And he is a published author on tech policy, and he sends me these like 25, 30-page documents, and they're brilliant and they're exciting. It's actually stuff that I'm interested in.
Okay.
However, they are thick, and he knows it. Like he sends it with the tag like "Enjoy your Sunday evening reading," and he sends it to me. He sends it to me at like Sunday at 10:30 a.m., knowing that it's going to take me then till like midnight to get through his 15-page paper on. Hold on, I have a title right here. What's the one he recently sent me on Uber? Uber and the market failure of privacy policies.
Oh.
So when your buddy is sending you articles like that once a week, here's a good connection between those two. ADHD reading, and whenever Logan sends me an article, because I'm connected to that person, Logan, my buddy, and because I'm connected to that disorder, that difference in cognition, that ADHD, I am passionate about them.
Yeah.
I love them. I am energetic about them, and it's easy for me to pick through those studies. I mean, that 731-page study drug effectiveness review project, I will pick through that little bit by little every day because it's fascinating enough.
Right.
And so it like I said in the speech, it holds my attention and it's important to me. And that's not just an ADHD thing. That helps me because I'm ADHD. It's easier for me to focus on those studies because they matter to me.
Well, it's relevant. It's not, a lot of times people do try to send you, I know, man. People send me, very stupid, rudimentary bullshit that I'm not interested in at all, and I won't read it. And they'll ask me about it. Did you read the thing I forwarded you? No, fuck no, I didn't read that.
Look, I've had those as well. I won't name names, but I've gotten those things. Hey, did you read this thing? Yeah, no, it was great, dude. It was I see where you're coming from. I read the title and just assumed what it was about. Yeah, I mean those. I get those studies a lot from family and friends, and I devour them. I enjoy them. I have to enjoy them, and I have to read them because recently, because I started this new public speaking push, which sort of fell into my lap in May of this year, I have received positive endorsements, but I've also received negative endorsements. People have reached out who are knowledgeable. Journalists, educators, professionals, and have said, stop what you're doing.
Really?
Now, luckily, the few of those who have reached out that way, in my opinion, are kind of crackpots and a little bit crazy and conservative and negative. So I've been publicly denounced on Twitter now. I've officially been professionally denounced on Twitter.
You know what? I saw today, I was Googling, man, when I was looking up some stuff for you, and there was someone that said, I don't remember the website, but they said that your TED Talk made them angry. And they basically said that they didn't like the fact that you were saying that children can't manage medications, and there was a whole list of things that they didn't like about your thing. But it was just interesting to see, like, wow, this actually bothers people? Like, I didn't think there'd be anyone who'd be mad about this, but apparently there are.
Man, I am very proud of my over 10,000 likes, my upvotes, but there are, I think, well over 100 dislikes, and something my roommates enjoyed doing a few months ago was they just didn't realize that there was such turmoil and positivity over this TED Talk. We all knew that it was in the hundreds of thousands of views, but they didn't quite know how deep the rabbit hole went. And I was preparing for another interview or something, and two of my roommates were going through the negative responses,
right.
And one of them in particular was like, "Oh my God, people hate you." And I was like, yeah, there are some people out there who really don't like me. And they're like, no, not like you. They hate you. There are some people out there who hate what you say.
Wonder, are these people maybe shills of the pharmaceutical not to get too conspiracy theory on you, but you gotta fucking wonder sometimes, are these people shills? Are these people set up to, come and comment and say nasty things on your videos to turn people away,
Hey man, hey, big pharmaceutical has done wonderful things, but they are also, they're as dark as Area 51 in my opinion. There's some shady shit that goes on in big pharma. I will say that predominantly the dislikes and the negative commentary has usually been not all the time, but usually been when someone took it personally, as though I was personally attacking them for giving their kids medication. And usually when someone reaches out to me directly, and not even usually, all the time, if someone sends me a negative comment, I respond to that person immediately and say, why do you feel that way? What did I say that made you feel that way? And only very recently did a professional, a journalist, call me out on Twitter about my speech. I reached out via email. I don't believe in that like public Twitter,
bashing each other,
bashing each other bullshit. It's just boring. So it's useless. So I emailed this person and said, hey, I don't know why you felt the need, because she was many years my senior and a professional in the field, and instead of reaching out and saying, hey, I have some differences in opinion with you, but you're younger, let's talk about it, and I think you've got a great voice, and let's work towards being teammates, she decided to shit on me publicly. And then when I emailed her an olive branch, she emailed me back an even more vicious and negative response, and after that I was done. I didn't respond back, and I'm actually going to see her at the National Children and Adults with ADHD Convention this November in New Orleans, my home city, and I cannot wait to go to her talk.
That should be fun. You know what, man? I hate to do this, but we're going to have to wrap this up. I just got a text that my ride will be here in about 8 minutes. So Let me, real quick, man, is there any YouTube info you want people to know? Website info? Time to spit it out, man.
Absolutely. I have this little section of my notes called Help. There are a ton of websites that are perfect for all this sort of thing. Attitudemag.com, ADDITUDEMAG.com. Help, the number 4, ADHD.org. CHAD is an organization that I'm a member of, CHADD.org. They're fantastic, and they have their own list of professionals in every city across the country, which is phenomenal. You can go into your city, in your state, and check the directory, and email and phone call. They stay completely up to date, and those are operating professionals in your area. Psychiatry.org is the APA's website, the American Psychiatric Association. You can also go to apa.org/topics/ADHD, and that's the DSM-5 ADHD chapter.
Right.
Other than that, there are some fantastic TED Talks on ADHD and the like. I'll upload on your website some of the names, some of the big players out there in terms of attention, focus, autism. My website is StephenTonti.com, and I am starting my public speaking campaign, if you will, next year. So keep an eye out. My speech is wildly updated, and taking it on tour. So keep an ear to the ground. I'll be out there shouting about it.
Absolutely, and it's Stephen with a PHENTONTI. So StephenTonti.com. Check out his website. Stephen, man, thanks for coming on and spending this time with us, and we'll have you back again soon.
Absolutely, it would be my pleasure. Thank you so much for reaching out, and it was great talking to you, man.
Absolutely. I love the work, man. I'm digging what you're doing. Keep it up. Fight the good fight, as they say. And
absolutely.
Man. And the rest of you fuckers, I'm Maxwell Silverhammer, and that's the story there, bitches. We'll see ya.